Cruiser, iFrostbolt, and Dr. Lupo. What do they all have in common? Well, they all play a certain playstyle that we call the Omega playstyle. Now, what is the Omega playstyle? Well, first of all, I will tell you that Omega is an extremely rare playstyle in the Crucible. In fact, all of these players are essentially like a hybrid between Beta and Omega, and there's a reason for that. We're going to talk about that here. But Omega is a type of playstyle that you might encounter from time to time. It's that playstyle that you get where you find somebody who just is not letting you poke that lane. It feels like no matter where you look, there is somebody pointing a red glare down your lane and trying to take your head clean off with one good blow. They're the type of players that will be crazy enough to run a scout rifle, a bow, and of course, everyone's favorite, the sniper rifle. Welcome back, Guardians, to another Dream Team video. I am your humble host, Meesum777, and today we are going to be taking a look at, like we mentioned, the Omega playstyle. This is something that you guys all voted on, and I will just go ahead and shoehorn this in right here. If you are not subscribed to the channel and you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe and vote on the next thing that you want to see. The next thing we are going to do is going to be Beta, because it's the last one to do, but we have more topics coming up, so stay tuned. I'll try to post into the community as soon as this video goes up, so make sure you're subscribed, and of course turn on the notifications, like the video, whatever. Comment on the video if you have any questions. I will try to sort the video if I can remember by top so I can answer your questions, or anybody in Dream Team to help answer your questions as well. So what I always like to do, what I always like to lead off with, is the textbook definition of an Omega. The exact definition that we have within our clan's Discord, which is in the description, by the way, for what we have as an Omega. For positioning, they are the back of the team. They are the very furthest thing back. Their entire responsibilities revolve around Overwatch, choke point denial, providing information on enemy movements, and provide long-range damage. They also specialize in utility tools. Like I mentioned, Destiny does not support Omega's playstyle very well. There are a few tools here and there which we will talk about, but as a whole, the maps are small and a lot of the weapons are better at close range than they are at long range. For example, scouts just aren't that good. My favorite weapon is a Mida multi-tool, just by the way, but I even have to admit that scouts are just not the meta, especially with 600 autos being as prevalent as they are right now. It's difficult to get ourselves in a position where a scout is good, but in other games, like Battle Royales in particular, Omegas can be extremely oppressive and crucial to the coordination of a team. What they provide to the team is that long-range informational Overwatch and choke point denial. They're able to provide burst damage at very long ranges, which is absolutely game-changing if you've got a good Omega on your team. Even within Destiny, if you've got somebody who's able to land just a body shot with anything that does anything above 60 damage at long ranges, it can absolutely flip a fight. They're so powerful and very underutilized in the Destiny 2 PvP world. Like I mentioned, their entire goal is that information and those picks. If you can get, as an Omega, just one kill while your enemy is engaged on the rest of your team, you have completely flipped the fight, because instead of it being, let's say, 6v6, it's now 6v5, or instead of it being 3v3, it's now 3v2, which is incredibly important. In the more controlled situations, you will see more Omegas come up, which is why, like I mentioned, in Battle Royale type games, they're extremely powerful because of their ability to maintain control on the situation. What they're able to provide to the team, like I mentioned, is essentially that way of dealing that burst damage. It can be a great way of saving somebody too. As a frontline player myself, I typically run Alpha or Beta. It is so nice to have a good Omega on my team, because the amount of times I'll get into a fist fight with somebody, or a shotgun fight, or an SMG fight, whatever, and then I go, you know what? This ain't going well, Chief, and I start to try to get out and I realize I'm about to lose, and then out of nowhere I hear the crack of a rifle, and then boom, that person's out. Is so nice. It is one of the best feelings in the world to know that somebody has got your back. A key part of why we play Omega as well is the communication. What Omegas, because of just the nature of their positioning, what it allows them to do is allows them to maintain a really good grasp on everything that's happening on the battlefield. You're essentially somebody who's sitting in the back and observing more of the slice of pie that your enemies might not see, or your frontline might not see. Their slice of pie might be a little bit smaller. They might have a much closer, more intimate engagement with an opponent. You, on the other hand, as an Omega, are seeing a lot more. You're getting the grand picture. You're not getting stuck seeing the tree through the forest, or the forest through the trees, or however that saying goes. Similarly, another why as to the Omegas is that control and fear factor. And when we're examining some of these other players, we can definitely see that. You're seeing Cruiser's gameplay, you're seeing Frostbolt's gameplay, you're seeing Dr. Lupo's gameplay. All of these here are maintaining a certain level of control. Now, where this gets interesting for these three players in particular is how they're going about this control. You can see here that these players are taking some duels that are a little bit more on the risky side, and that's where the line between Beta and Omega, specifically in Destiny, gets a bit blurry. Because, again, in Destiny, close range is just more supported. But you can see, even though they have those tools, they have that hand cannon for those more close range engagements, they're still able to maintain a grasp on the situation, and they're preferring, and this is where we're talking about, like I mentioned in the very first video, it is a play style, it is a mindset. The way that they're typically taking engagements is that they're preferring to take it at their pace rather than countering the tempo and the pace of their enemies. I hope that makes sense. You can see here that, like I mentioned, there's some beta tendencies as some of these players are punishing players as they're pushing in, but when the match resets or the fight resets, they're regrouping back to a position where they can get that sniper rifle shot off and they can keep things in front of them. They're not trying to take clean 1v1s, they're trying to take them out before they even get a shot off. Specifically, you can even see Frostbolt. It was difficult to figure out whether they were beta or they were Omega, but for Frostbolt in particular, this little phrase right here,
I can control the whole map, bro,
sold me that he absolutely is looking to play more Omega than he is Beta. And of course, good players can play whatever the hell they want. Each of these players, of course, are good enough that they can slap on a shotgun and do just fine. And all players will include some level of Beta in order to be adaptable, but you can see that they tend to lean more towards Overwatch and area control rather than taking 1v1s. Now let's quickly go over the how of Omega, some perks, some weapons, etc. to look out for in any game that you're playing. Like that it was implied, Omegas are typically your designated sniper. If you're the type of player that plays that, you'll understand what I'm saying when I say that sometimes you need a backup tool. So, even though you might be focused on that long-range damage, it might be good for you to take something that's more mid-close range comfortable. Doesn't mean they're going to be primarily flexing into it, it means you're primarily going to be flexing into your long-range tools with that as your backup option. Some good perks to keep an eye out for is anything that can give you any more information. Knucklehead Radar or Foe Tracers are all excellent choices. In Destiny in particular, Hunters do excellently at playing Omega. Any types of tools that can provide some level of utility is also important as well. Perks that can reward snappiness and precision will also do you well. Things like Rapid Hit or Outlaw, Quick Draw, Snapshot, that type of stuff, anything where it can reward precision will do you well as well, because that's generally what you're aiming for. Let's talk about some positioning. Like we mentioned, you are the very furthest thing back in your team. Your goal is to be able to see all of the moving chess pieces on the board. You're supposed to be able to see whether your alpha is flanking, and you'd be able to let him know that the area that he's about to push into is either under fire, or if he's completely out of coverage, you should be able to let him know. Communication is absolutely vital as an Omega. If you are not capable of talking and shooting at the same time, I recommend that you give one some practice, even if it's just for yourself, just calling out your own plays. It is absolutely crucial that you're able to communicate as an Omega. Similarly, you'll do well to have a Gamma with you, that supportive playstyle to help box some things out. One of the areas where you're weak, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, is that you have a difficulty. You'll typically have a difficulty if you're getting pushed. Close range spaces is just not going to be the thing that you're going to be good at, just by default. It's just the way that you are. Doesn't mean that you can't have some tool to, match it, but let's say an alpha gets on top of you, you will have one tool for every 3 tools that that alpha has. So obviously avoiding close range engagements is going to be the way to go. In more tactical spaces, such as when we play Alamo, which is our defensive play style, you're going to be the thing that's able to see the majority of the poke lanes. Make sure that you're not exposing yourself to any more than 2 lanes maybe at once, as long as you're able to keep an eye on generally what's happening. Make sure that you're rounding cover in such a way that you're able to lock out lanes comfortably without exposing yourself too much. In suppress and flank type situations where your front line is going for a flank, you're primarily looking for keeping an eye on the positioning of your enemies. Of course, applying suppressive fire is good, but it's difficult to do as a sniper. If you can get a pick, excellent. Make sure that you are not locked in so much that you lose where your enemies are going. Similarly, avoid any type of situations where you get what's called sniper syndrome. Sniper syndrome is essentially where you're so locked into your scope that you are completely blindsided by the things that are happening to your left or right of your scope. Avoid any situations where you get yourself caught up in the open. Despite Omegas being far in the back, it is very easy to get yourself in a position where you can't get to cover fast enough if somebody else engages you in a space that you weren't ready for. Stay close enough to cover that you can provide yourself some defense, but stay far enough away and looking at your team that you can keep an eye on what's happening as well. It's a difficult balance. One thing to keep in mind, if your team decides to what we call full dive an area, that you do not pivot off of your points of interest or major areas of control. For example, if you're able to control B and your team decides that they're ready to spawn flip, make sure that you do not leave B. You need to have some type of foothold. Your team is going to pivot back off of you. If, of course, the team calls that you need a little bit more extra push, don't be afraid to get your hands a little bit dirty. But if at all possible, try to maintain major points of interest such as mid-map control, heavy, B flag, anything like that. Even if it's in something like a battle royale, some type of area where your team can fall back on. You are the last line of defense. A great analogy to keep in mind is you are the goalie of the team. You're essentially the very last thing that the team is able to rely on. If you are too far out of your goalie box, the enemy team will be able to score a lot easier. It is your job to shut down those flanks and keep an eye on those choke points, so do not push too far forward. Especially me myself, I have a tendency to play way too aggressively, and especially if I'm kicking ass, it can be very easy to do, so be careful. Another thing to keep in mind to watch out for is what we call stale positioning. If you're occupying a space for a long period of time and you notice that your enemies are starting to get weary of how you're poking a lane and how you're positioning, you've probably turned your angle stale. Just like how you would leave bread out on the counter for too long and it turns stale and it's no longer good, it's the same idea. Even if you rotate just a little bit to freshen up the positioning a little bit, it will do you wonders. Typically speaking, I recommend in a faster paced game to get like 2 kills and then find a new position. If your enemy team is a lot smarter, they might require only 1 kill before you need to rotate your positioning. Staying generally in the area and coming back to a lane after you've rotated a few different other places. It is vastly important as an Omega that you try to do your best to make your vision occupy as much space as possible. Essentially, anywhere you see is places you control. Just like out of The Lion King, anywhere the light touches, you control. So you try to make sure that you're able to touch as much stuff as possible. But that being said, don't be afraid to retreat if you start to get pushed. Like mentioned, you don't have the tools to be able to backpedal as well as some of the other squads might be able to. So being able to quickly turn and get the heck out of dodge before you get destroyed is incredibly important. Making sure that your gammas are able to support you and that you're able to call out damage on opponents as they're pushing in to help shut it down. Try to maintain the space as best as possible, but like I mentioned, you're the goalie, so if you're getting pushed, something up ahead of you has gone horribly wrong or you got flanked hella hard. But that's the gist of the Omega. Be sure to let us know in the comments section down below what role you want to see next, and we're also going to put out a community poll on what you want to see for the tactics. We're going to start moving into some of the tactics and call-out side of things, so be sure to let us know in the community polls. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. We're a small group of friends. We're looking to grow, and we're growing as best we can. You guys have been absolutely awesome, by the way. We recently hit 2K subscribers, and it's been great. So, you know what? Thank you guys. So, hope you guys appreciated this video. I hope this helps. We've been getting a lot of questions about this. We're going to be working our way through. We wanted to make sure that the script was good and that we are able to get this information and we had some gameplay to back it up. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Like I said, be sure to let us know if you have any comments or questions down below. Bless your faces and deuces.